Hello, welcome back. This is Dr. Robin, DNA, PE, CRNA. Thanks for tuning back into ND Speaks TV. We are back again. The last time, I remember we discussed the route to go through to practice anesthesia. We ended at where we wanted to discuss about the 5-year plan from getting your RN, which is your registered nurse, to where you become a CRNA. And I was going to give you my my plan, what I did to make this pretty, I wouldn't say it was easy and smooth all the way, but it helped lighten the load and the stress that I would have felt if I did not go through this plan that I set up. So 5-year plan. First year, you get your RN, and I'm talking about the RN BSN. For you to go to CRNA school, you have to have your RN BSN first, right? And then after that, year 1, you get your RN BSN. You want to go to work in ICU. It's one of the requirements, at least average of, I think it's 1.5 to 2 years average. ICU experience. What I would say is that first job matters. That first job is what kickstarts you to where you're going to be at. And I would advise, of what I did was I went into the cardiovascular intensive care unit, the CVICU, where you see a lot of things. You're dealing with a lot of hemodynamic changes with patients that are post cardiac surgery. And we also have patients, critically ill patients that cannot be managed in a general ICU. We get those patients, especially if they need to go on a 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐬 and all that stuff. So we get those patients too. So you want to go into a CVICU, or you want to go into a trauma ICU. Or you want to go into worst case scenario, you want to go into surgery, just a general surgical ICU, because you see different patients coming out from different surgical procedures that they need to be managed in the ICU, or patients that are critically ill and then will occasionally have surgical procedures while they're in the ICU that needs to be done. Now, in that first year, you want to do a couple of things financially, right? Disclaimer, this is not providing financial advice. We are not providing we are not financial advisors. I'm just telling you what I did. You want to make sure you sign up for 401k. You want to max out your 401k. I'm not sure if I believe a lot of people at this point know what a 401k is, and so you want to max out your 401k. Make sure you contribute, because that's free money, right? That's free money on the table. If your company matches 100% or 4% on or 4% or 5% contribution, I've seen 6%. Make sure you contribute 6% of your paycheck every time, right up when you start year 1, right? And they'll match that 100%. And so you having that money going into your savings, being invested tax-free, right? And, well, not tax-free, tax-deferred, right? Depending on which one you contribute. If you're contributing to just a regular 401k, or if you're contributing to a Roth, there are some Roth IRA instruments that are now provided in some 401k. So you want to max that out, right? Because you're getting free money matched by the company, right? Every year. So you're giving yourself 2 to 3 years to make sure you capture all this free money that is matched by your company, right? And so you want to make sure you max that out. And that in that year 1 is where you start investments. What I did is, when I knew I was going to be going to school, right? I knew that I needed to take care of some expenses, right, way before I start school. I knew that I could not handle some expenses way before I started school. So what I did in those first 2-3 years before I start school, I went in heavy on investments, right? I invested in rental properties. I invested in short-term rentals, long-term rentals. I invested in flipping of properties, right? A lot of things that you can invest in, and a lot of these things are things that you need to dedicate time to understand. You need to talk to your financial advisor. You need to talk to your accountant to see what you can do that can put you in a better financial position, right? 2 to 3 years down the road, when you're going to be in school, to be able to provide you some sort of income, right? Some sort of income, because remember, a lot of programs you're not going to work. If you try to work, number one, you might not do very well. Some people have done it successfully, but Not a lot of people have done it successfully. It's very, very little amount of people that can do it successfully or have done it successfully while working. So now what you want to say, number 3 is to project what is my expenditures. What is going to be my expenditure in that 3 years that I'm going to be in school? So you have to understand what your expenditure is going to be. Right? You don't want to just go in blindly and start school and then you're like, oh, I got to pay this, I got to pay that, and I don't know this, and I don't know that, I don't have that money. So you want to go down to the T, right? Down to the T, what your expenditure is going to be. That's where you want to be at. What your expenditure is going to be, down to the T. And I can, we'll provide this in the chat also, and I can tell you how I categorize this. And this is what I did, right? I needed to determine how much money I'm going to need for the 3 years because I'm not going to be at work, right? How much money I'm going to need to spend for those 3 years, right? So, biggest category is your rent or your mortgage. That is the biggest category of expenditure that you have where you live. Your rent or your mortgage. That is the most expenditure you have. So, if you can take care of that, right? If you can take care of that, that kind of brings down the burden, right? The burden of your expenditure, right? And so what you want to do is, do you have a rent? Do you have a mortgage? If you're renting, then you want to downsize, right? If you're single, you're not married, you're single, you don't have kids, you have the best opportunity. Downsize, get yourself into a room in a house, right? With all the tenants living, and you could pay $600, $700, $800 a month rent. And this all depends on location, where you're going to go to school at, right? Every location is different. Prices, if you're in LA, even if you get a room, it's going to be expensive. You're in New York, you get a room, still going to be expensive. So you want to make sure you understand that when you're applying for this programs that the program that you're going to be in, you want to take that, you want to keep that in the back of your mind, right? What is the expenditure going to be? What are the rents in this, what is the rent in this area, right? You don't want to go put yourself where you're trying to pay rent at $2,000 a month trying to go to school, right? So you want to make that a part of something you consider when choosing schools. The expenditure on rent, living expenses, and all that. It's a big part, right? And so if you're renting, downsize. Number 1, before you get done, before you get ready to start school, downsize. I will even advise downsize right out the gate 2 years before, right? Because you're going to be saving money that you could be using on paying for extra space that you don't need. You could downsize 2 years before, right? Leaving a room in a house, leaving a basement in a nice property, that you could pay less rent and save that extra money or invest that extra money. Now, if you own a mortgage, right? 2 things you could do. Either sell the house and downsize. That's number 1. Some people will be like, well, that's drastic, but the fact is, are you going to be able to afford that $2,000 mortgage while you're in school? This is a fact, right? So a lot of people that are in this program, that are going to this program, again, goes back, if you watch the first video that we did on this, goes back to what stage of life you're in, right? If you're young, in those age categories that we talked about, and you might not own a home, or you might own a home. So if you own a home and you have a family, then, you can't sell your house and get rid of your family, right? So that's where you become creative. You have a space in your basement that you can rent out to people, right? You rent that space out, you make that space available for rent it out, get people living there in that basement, and you get some money in, right? And you're reducing your cost of living there. And so what I personally did, I told myself that I am going to get rid of my mortgage for 3 years. However that is through investment, is through working extra hours, through working per diem, through working float pool before I started school to have the income, right, to be able to take care of that mortgage for 3 years. Because when you get that mortgage out of the way, or when you get that rent out of the way, right, your expenditure drastically goes down. And so, and another option, right, And again, we are not providing financial advice. We are not financial advisors. We're just trying to make it feasible for people to go to anesthesia school without worrying, right? And so another thing is you borrow from your 401k, right? Like if you borrowed from your 401k last year, you would be very happy right now because you wouldn't be going down with the market, right? Now that the market is a little bit tenuous, you will not be going down with the market, right? But borrowing from your 401k, you borrow that before you stop working. You do it just before you stop working so that they'll be able to approve it. Because if you stop working before you try to go borrow, you don't have a job. They're not going to give it to you. So you're borrowing your own money, which, number one, the payments that you're going to be paying back to yourself is going to be cheaper than the payment that you will be paying, than your mortgage payments. Hypothetically, if you had a $700, let's say if you had a $1,700 mortgage, right? In 3 years, you will spend probably about $50,000 to $60,000 for your mortgage, right? And if you have that $50,000 to $60,000 sitting in your 401k, hey, you borrow that, you pay that, right? You pay off that mortgage. Guess what? Now the payments that you pay back to your 401k every month is probably about $800 a month, right? So would you rather pay $800 a month to your 401k loan, or would you rather pay $1,700 to $2,000 a month to the mortgage company? You make the choice. You see, you've just reduced your liability, or you've just reduced your expenditure drastically by almost $1,000-something just doing that. Now, that is why I said from the first year, max out your 401k. Because now you're going to be playing with the house money at that point. You're going to be playing with the company money. When you borrowing it, you're not just borrowing the money you put in, right? You borrowing the money that the company also contributed for you. But now we go into vesting, right? Because some companies, you're vested after 3 years, you're vested after 5 years. So for you to be able to capture all the money that contributed, you have to understand what is their vesting timeline. Is their vesting timeline 3 years or is it 5 years? So you also have to understand that. So, but again, we are not financial advisors. We're just telling you that there are opportunities to do these things without killing yourself or without stressing out too much. So you've come to a point that you determine your finances, right? Your expenditure, where you have your mortgage, you put that aside, right? You know how much that is going to cost you a month. And then you find a way to reduce that. The key here is to go through your expenditure. What is your expenditure going to be? And then make sure you make an effort to have a plan on how you're going to reduce that. Now we have a plan on how we're going to reduce the mortgage, right? So that's a plan. And again, number two, you're talking about some people have cable, some people have phone. Do you need a cable while in school? No. Get rid of that because you're barely going to have time to watch cable, right? So you've deleted that expenditure. Phone. Make sure you get the easiest, cheapest, functional plan. That's at least going to work for you. You don't want to not be able to log into the internet. So make sure you're going to have an internet. You're going to have a cell phone service. But make sure you get something that, have incentives and, you can easily pay for. And then you budget your weekly food. How much is it going to take you to get groceries weekly? Every 2 weeks. You need to make a budget for that. Now, you come down to where you have, like clothing. Make sure you get all your clothes before you start school. I barely bought clothes when I was in school. I don't remember if I even bought any clothes when I was in school, right? But make sure you augment your wardrobe before you start school. Because guess what? It's not going to be necessary to be buying clothes while you're in school. Now, if you have family, if you're married, if you have kids, this becomes a little bit different, right? You have kids that are going to be doing activities. You have kids that their life still needs to continue. You have your wife that, hopefully she's working. And so she could be a part of making your life very, very easy. So you need to bring her income into the plan and say, how much are you going to make while I'm in school, right? Is there a way to improve that income through certifications, through other things, right? So before you start school, I'm telling you, before you start school, she needs to get some certifications or whatever needs to happen for her to increase her income while you're in school, like what my wife did. My wife increased her income before I started, right? By getting a nurse practitioner, right? And so while I was in school, our income increased, greatly. I mean, our income increased almost 30 to 40 to 50%, and so that was a good thing. And so that kind of came into support where I was not able to put in money while I was in school. So that, remember in the first video we said this is a team work. Work with your partner. If you don't work with your partner, this is going to be difficult. And then remember, you have those rental properties that you hopefully invested in. That's going to give you income every month. You know, from my side, I have income every month that was coming from investments I made, right? From investments I made. Now, if you need to understand what specific investments I made during the period, you can always, inbox me, send us a comment, send us an email, and, we can talk about that. Lastly, here, you want to be able to pay off loans. Do not have any credit card loan going to school. Make sure it's paid off. Do not have any car note going to school. Make sure it's paid off. I paid off all my credit cards, paid off all the car loans. Make sure they're all paid off. Because if you don't, then that adds to your living expenses, right? So pay off everything that needs to be paid off, right? And so you don't have to worry about it while in school. Your car. If you have an expensive car, you could sell that and downsize to a cheaper car. You wouldn't need to be fancy in school. You could get another one that is more fancier when you're done, right? You could go from having an Audi or a Mercedes-Benz that is too expensive to getting a Toyota Camry or a Toyota Corolla that, number one, is cheaper. It's going to save you on gas, right? It's going to save you on maintenance, and it's a strong car. So I'm just, hypothetically, that's something you can do. I have friends that did that, sold their nice cars and bought Camrys, and it was just beautiful for their expenditure, and that was perfect. The next video, what we're going to talk about is how to set yourself up to be successful and to be a strong applicant, right? You're going to set yourself up to be the most desirable applicant. You don't want to go in there just for going in there. You want to go in there and know that these people are going to want you in your program. So next video, we're talking about how to make yourself look good as a strong applicant. Thanks for joining. Again, this is Dr. Robin, CRNA, the NAP. Thanks for joining.